Okay, so first on our agenda, improvements to the ATF meetings. We did talk a bit about this yesterday, but I wanted to be respectful of your choices to leave the meeting ahead of schedule rather than jumping into today. For those of you who have facilitated meetings before, and I took notes on this yesterday, this was fascinating. I thought, nobody else will think it's fascinating but me, but I thought it was fascinating. Only 4 people in this room have facilitated meetings for more than 5 years. 5 people have done it for 3 or 4 years. And 17 of you, it's your first or second year doing it. That's a lot, right? And that's a lot of change. And I would say even like the second year, you're really just knowing like what to expect and then kind of improving on it. The first year is always just kind of a bit ambiguous and going into something and, hoping it works out. So if you have facilitated a meeting before, you know that there's a portion of the agenda called the statewide update. The statewide update covers data from our database, trends in higher education in Arizona, different work that we do. And in different years, we've evolved how that's worked. And in recent years, we drafted a script for you so you could read it. We drafted potential questions you might be asked so that you could field those and gave you tips. And this year, CN and I just decided, why not have me do it and record it? And then you guys can just play that. So that is what you'll do. I hope that all of you, especially those that have had to do it before, will applaud and say, oh my gosh, this saves me so much stress and anxiety because I hated doing that and I didn't want to misrepresent anything and I didn't like reading off of a script. So I hope you love it. So I'm going to pull up a couple different things and show you how to access this information and where it is and what you'll need to do. So let's share my screen. Again, I feel like if you don't actually verbalize that when you're sharing screen on Zoom, you really missed out because I have to say that every single time. I'm going to share my screen. So if we orient ourselves back to AZTransfer, and we come to faculty and staff and we scroll down to AZTransfer facilitators, you can access it this way, or you can log into the chat lines. There are a couple different places depending on how you've been trained or how you like to orient yourself. I sometimes like this way because you don't have to log in, but it doesn't give you everything that the chat lines login gives you. So if you're logging into the chat lines, and we come here to the facilitator corner that CN showed us yesterday, there's the ATF virtual binder. Now, do not do all of this together. Whatever happened yesterday, we have a couple different theories. One theory that I don't know if it's true is that if lots of people access the virtual binder at the same time because the graphic files were so large, it could have crashed our firewall. I don't know if that's actually what happened, but do not click through this right now. Look at it later because we don't want to crash our website. And some version of something like that happened yesterday, but I'll show you on my screen. ATF virtual binder. You'll scroll through and choose your institution. You'll choose yourself. Hello, Shirley. This shows you the ATF meetings that you've been assigned. Double check these, make sure that these are consistent with your recollection and your assignment, the emails that CN has communicated to you. There are some other training tools here, the ATF meeting calendar checklist, responsibilities, roles, and definitions. But if we scroll down here, it shows you the statewide update presentation. And this is your favorite executive director. I can't listen to it over and over again because I don't like the sound of my own recorded voice. But this is what you would pull up in that point of the agenda and you would play this. Now, CN and I are going to work with you guys in August to make sure that you have these skills. We tried to play around with it a little bit yesterday and CN and my screens were showing different things, but you will want to make sure that you also share your system sound or your computer sound doing it through Zoom because it won't be enough to play it through the speakers. But you can see the time frame here is 19 minutes and 32 seconds. If you are not familiar with Zoom, like if you don't have an 8 and 9-year-old kid like I do that just watch YouTube videos all the time, this pops it out into full screen. That's more optimal for viewing, especially on the computer.
Hello, and thank you for joining us.
And there's my great
today.
voice, which you guys probably say sounds exactly like what you hear me talking like all the time, but to me, it sounds really weird. So this is the statewide update that you will play and it will run for 19 minutes. You can adjust the speed if you think that I'm talking too slowly. You can change it to playing back 1.25 or 1.5. I tried to very intentionally speak slowly and deliberately so that people could understand, but it runs through a bunch of charts, graphics, data. It runs through our mission and our vision. It runs through everything that you typically would have said in the statewide update, and you no longer have to say. If people ask you questions about the statewide update, if you don't know the answer, which I'm not expecting you to, just note that question, put it in the meeting report, and say, I will have the executive director get back to you, or I will have AZTransfer get back to you. It's up to you how you want to say, you know, I don't know the answer to that, or I'll write that down and somebody will be back in touch with you. You don't have to pretend to make sense of data slides and questions and things like that. So any questions about this statewide update and the role in the facilitator meeting?
I have a quick question, and maybe you were going to cover this in a minute. You know how we would show like discipline specific notes to the groups? Is that something that's going to be separate that we present after, or we're just not going to cover?
We're going to try not doing it this year and see if people miss that and want that. So what Patty's referencing is we've also done a number of different things over the year. We have sent discipline specific data. So like if you're in the biology ATF or the economics ATF, we would send data the week before the meeting from our assist report showing specific trends for new transfer students in those majors and graduation reports in those numbers. We've also tried incorporating that into a slide so that people could view that and have that. I'm curious what we wanted to do this year without doing that to see if people have questions. And so if that's something that your group wants or remembers getting, that's another thing you can just note down and we can email to the group afterward. We couldn't think of a real easy, efficient way to do it concisely in the recording, or also to pull up a separate slide to have available in a way that didn't cause a lot of work. But if different ATF groups want that, we certainly can provide it to them. Okay, other questions about the statewide update? Okay, so I'm going to pull back up the template for the ATF agenda. This will eventually be posted on the dashboard and your virtual binder, but this is just a reminder again. So you as the facilitator, if you've been assigned an ATF, you will be following this outline. The chair will do the welcome and introductions and the review of the meeting minutes. Then you as the facilitator will play the statewide update that covers these things. Then you will take people through the course, the college and university course prefixes, the course equivalency guide. You will take people through the common course matrices, the exams for review, and then you will wrap up the meeting. I'm not going to spend time today going through exactly what that is, because if we go to the virtual binder and if you go to all of the meeting resources, Day 2 of last year's retreat, we recorded exactly how to walk through that. We walked through how to prepare for that. We talked through things about printing off your matrices and having copies of those available so you could write right on there. You also have a responsibility as the meeting facilitator to enter in those matrix changes in the chat lines to route them through our system. We're also not going to go through those details today because all of that is outlined in Day 1 and Day 2 of last year's facilitator training retreat, which are in the facilitator corner here and in the training materials. I will just show you really quickly on a dashboard. If we pick, let's see, what's a good one I feel like today? Music. The dashboard, when you pull this up as a facilitator, after you've done the statewide update, you will be going through, here are the prefixes. You go through each of these prefixes. Here are the university course prefixes. You are responsible for updating that. When you click on each of these college prefixes, it pulls up the course equivalency guide for that institution for this prefix. You go through this and you say, for example, oh, look, here's MUS 102, course title not found. Hopefully, because we're going to come back to this later today, that's already going to be fixed because we're going to pull that through. But we notice that ASU and U of A don't have equivalencies for it. That means Arizona Western College actually needs to submit it to ACETs. All of that is explained in the training videos from last year. You will also pull up the common course matrix. and you will go through this and make sure this is aligned. You will also pull up each of the exam matrices. What I will tell you is if you watch those videos and go through and find that there's already a lot of alignment, like here there's already a lot of alignment on this Common Course matrix. You don't have to spend a lot of time in this Common Course matrix. You can just say to the faculty, is this still current? Northland Pioneer College, we just want to make sure that you're still not accepting any music exams for credit from AP. We still want to make sure Dene College, you're not accepting this music theory exam from AP for credit. If everything else looks okay, you give them like a 30 to 60-second pause and you move on. We've gotten a lot of feedback from faculty that they don't want to spend hours reviewing these matrices if they've already aligned them in previous years. But when you prepare for it, when you print it off, you could put like, I indicated in my notes, I put a star on something, like if it needs my attention, or I highlight it if it's done. You might write a little thing on here, a note to yourself, already aligned, or highlight Dene College, highlight, NPC, highlight TOCC to make sure that you check on those. Again, we're not going to spend a lot of time going through that thoroughly today. It's going to be your responsibility to go back to those training videos and watch them to familiarize yourself with those tasks. So that's really it. It's the prefixes, the CEG checks within the prefixes here. It's the Common Course matrix and it's the exam matrix. Okay, everything else should be done by the institutional facilitator. The role that we're talking about today is what you will do in a meeting and what you do as a meeting facilitator. Okay, then at the end of the agenda here, it's really important that you wrap up the meeting before you go on to the discussion, because oftentimes these faculty groups will have really nuanced things that they want to talk about in their field or that's happening on their campus. And we want to make sure that we record any ATF decisions or any questions or comments that need either my response or a reaction or follow-up from AZTransfer. It's really important to record those. I like to be accountable to groups. And so if in an ATF meeting, they've asked for something for 3 years in a row, but it doesn't get to my office, they're going to be really upset with you as a facilitator or really upset with AZTransfer as an organization and say, every single year we say we want this changed and it doesn't get changed. If you note it in your meeting report, if you make sure it's noted in your meeting notes, then we will address it. That's another really important thing. I guess we didn't include it in the agenda, but it is your responsibility or the chair's responsibility to make sure there is a note taker that records the meeting. Even though Zoom does record the meeting and transcribes the meeting, we don't want to sift through 4 hours of 43 different meetings listening to Zoom recordings. And so the note taker does not have to take Robert Rules of Order meeting minutes, but they need to record the high points and the attendance for the meeting. That is what is included in the meeting report. Okay, we need suggested agenda items for the next meeting. If there are things that you've decided to table, or if within the discussion they talk about, next year, we'd really like to talk about our national conference and taking forth this, or next year, we'd like to talk about developing more 100 and 200 level courses at the community college in dance, whatever that is, and then plan the next fall meeting. AZTransfer does not support spring meetings. If the groups want to meet in the spring, they certainly can, but we do not provide a facilitator for those meetings. We do not provide Zoom links. We do not provide any of the infrastructure for the spring meetings. They can meet on their own if they'd like. We need you to identify a specific chair from an institution and a name, not just Arizona Western College will chair the meeting, not just ASU will chair the meeting. We need to know the person's first and last name. One of the things you're really going to want to make sure, though, is that they don't volunteer somebody that's not in the room. Oftentimes those people are retiring or they're on sabbatical. So make sure it is somebody in the room. Same with the host. We hope that we will return to in-person meetings next year. Some groups will still choose to do virtual meetings, and that's fine. About half of our group this year had selected a virtual meeting. The other half had picked in-person. We fully anticipate that travel restrictions will be lifted and hosting restrictions will be lifted. And then the location of the meeting, we need a specific institution and a specific campus. Northland Pioneer College, many of us only know Northland Pioneer College as NPC. If you know anything about NPC, you know at one point they had 11 campuses and centers all over the northeastern part of Arizona. If you put NPC on there as the location, we're going to assume that you mean the Show Low campus, but you might also mean Holbrook. You might mean Winslow. You might mean any number of locations that they have, and we need to know the specific campus and then the date and the time for the meeting. Then you can turn it back over to the chair to go through curricular updates and discussion and close the meeting. It really is different on a Zoom meeting. When we were in person, this section of the agenda was a great time for facilitators who were savvy with doing the meeting report during the meeting or doing your matrix changes could do it during this time. That's a lot harder to do on Zoom because you are going to be owning and facilitating the Zoom link. You will have to stay on Zoom. You will have to be available either to make the chair the co-host so they can share their screen. You're going to have to be familiar enough with Zoom so that you can manage and navigate all of that stuff. And so multitasking in that capacity probably won't be the easiest thing to do, but I'll leave that up to you guys if you're comfortable doing that. Questions about the ATF agenda or your responsibilities or how to locate the training materials to familiarize yourself with all of this? Okay. All right. So Cian, I got us a little behind schedule today. I have us, well, it's only about 20 minutes, but I think that's okay. Cian's going to go over some ATF meeting tips and different specific things that you'll need to be successful in the meeting.
Yes, you've been very thorough and covered. I'll catch us back up. That's all I'm trying to say. So we'll get there really quick. Thank you, Kelly. The only other things that I'm going to add to what Kelly mentioned as far as ATF meeting tips go is I want to remind you guys that in the meeting report, when you guys submit the meeting report, it is really important to do to upload two documents. The first are the meeting notes for the meeting, and the second is the attendance report. The attendance sign-in sheet. You will be demonstrating or you will be conducting these, facilitating these meetings virtually this year. So they're not going to have anybody actually sign in. Whatever document you create at your own little desk with your handwriting, checking off a list of an RSVP, printed out copy of some kind, any documentation you have that shows us who attended the meeting, if you will scan that and upload that, we do need that as a reference material because so many we use that report to code certain things in the system, in the computer system, which helps us generate the official attendance report. So if there's ever a question, we need a document to be able to go back to and say, oh, you know, we've looked and this really is what the attendance was. So it seems redundant because you're already inputting that information into the meeting report, but it would help us tremendously if you would also capture it in your handwritten way. You can even do a Word document and type people's names in, whatever way you want to do to back up that information so we have a second source of who attended those meetings. Additionally, in the meeting report, please remember that there are sections of the meeting report that ask for any changes that need to be made to the CCM or any of the matrices or tables that are stored in each ATF dashboard. Please remember that even if you type those changes into the meeting report, even if those changes are included in the meeting notes, which they should be, your role is not over until that is actually executed. So you actually have to go into the pending change or requesting matrix changes. You actually have to go in and make the changes. You have to go in and create the records, the digital records that then get spread throughout the network. It's not enough just to alert us that those changes need to be made. You actually have to go in and make those changes. And when you see it all the way through to the end of that cycle is the point where you're done for that particular topic at that particular time. But actually entering those changes into the matrices and asking for those changes, entering those proposed changes is the end. That's when you reach the end of your responsibility with the meeting. Remember that all of the Zoom links are on the dashboard for each ATF. Kelly does send out notification to the listserv for that particular ATF and lets them know, you know, that the link is built into her email, it just auto populates in the email. But at the point that people can't find the email, they don't remember the email, they didn't put it in their calendar, we keep all of that information. It's not behind a password. It's all on the dashboard. You guys have seen it because that's how you link to today's meeting. So push everybody to the dashboard as much as you can push them to the dashboard, because if they're, and I'll tell you the importance of that. We had a situation last year where we had a bum meeting link. We couldn't get it to work. No matter what we did, we couldn't get it to work. So we quickly were able to create a new meeting link and post it on the dashboard. We sent an email out to everyone on the listserv, but not everybody checks their email 30 seconds before a meeting begins. But they will go to the dashboard and try and click on the link. If they pull one out of their calendar and it's not working, if they go to an old email that's 2 weeks old and it's not working, and they are trained to know that the most updated information is stored on the dashboard, they will go to that dashboard if we train them to do that, and they'll get that information lickety split, and everyone can continue to connect to the meeting, even though the link changed 30 seconds before the meeting started. So push to that as much as you can push to that. Also, just remember that for any ATF group that or discipline that you are considered to have a program for, please remember we expect you to support that ATF meeting by sending a faculty member. If you are unable to find a faculty member, you as your institution's facilitator are now responsible for all the information that that faculty would have done had that faculty been at that meeting. So it is really important that you push faculty to the meetings that you have programs for, that you offer courses in, whatever it is. If you don't, and you have a no program status in that particular discipline, no worries, don't fret, don't stress, don't think that there's anything punitive. There is not. The punitive portion comes, how I look at it is, if you're not on it and you don't get your faculty to the meetings, now you're punishing yourself, if you will, if you look at it as a punishment, but it's not, right? It's a privilege. This is a privilege that you get to go in and go into those, all of that data that we store in our database, and update everything on your own, running back and forth to your faculty with that department and saying, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? It is so much easier just to get your faculty there. Okay, and then the one last tip that I have for you is I actually kind of fell into this thing last year, and it worked out phenomenally well. I was facilitating a group, I believe, if I remember right, it was the film group, and they had, it's a newer ATF, and they had not built out their common courses. They had a few columns, they had not built everything out, but they had spoken as a group prior to the ATF meeting. The chair had gotten everyone aligned, and every institute, they had agreed on what the categories would be of the classes, or what the coursework would, what the header of each column in the CCM would be called. And then each institution threw in their classes that they thought were going to count for, that would transfer for those categories, those headers. And so when we opened up discussion on the CCM, it was, they did it, man. I mean, they really hashed it out, and they took a long time, and they were able to figure it out, but it was a complicated conversation, and I was having a hard time following it. So I took the best notes I could. I didn't have a note taker, right? The note taker is remote somewhere elsewhere in the state. And so I'm taking the best notes I can. And then as they move to the next part of the agenda, I stopped sharing my screen, and like Kelly, I can't multitask while I'm on Zoom. And so I was able to just, okay, let them have their conversation and give me a minute while this is fresh in my mind. And I was able to enter all of these proposed changes, how I thought they were supposed to look based upon my limited understanding of their discipline. When we got to the end of the meeting, I asked if I could share my screen one more time. And it was beautiful because I could pull up that CCM, and it was filled with red. It was filled with what I interpreted them to need. And I was able, and all the institutions were online, and I was able to say, is this what you meant? And it wasn't. Shocker. And they said, no, change this, change this, change this. I could do it right then. And eventually we all agreed that this representation of what I was able to input on the CCM was the best representation of what they wanted to have happen. Now, each one of those proposed changes are now a digital file that get sent all through the state, and that starts the whole process going. And this year, when they meet together, they're light years ahead of where they would have been had I waited until several days after the meeting and then tried to enter in those changes. So it is so much easier if you take a minute, just a minute, while free discussion is going on, enter those proposed changes right then. It makes it easier on everyone. If you can find a way to make that happen, that's the best way to go. And does anybody have any questions for me? Those are my best tips. I don't know if they'll help or hurt, but that's what I have found works best for me when I'm facilitating these. Anybody have any questions on this?
If I could add one thing, just thinking about human nature, that is my preference. What CN described is my personal preference. And if you get to a level of comfort and familiarity where you can do that, it will serve you better in the long run. Sometimes I think an easy way to explain things or set expectations is to explain what not to do. And so definitely what not to do. Do not wait a week or two after the meeting to make your proposed matrix changes or to make any changes to the databases. Right now, set in your calendar some time immediately following the meeting, like an hour, maybe an hour and a half to follow up. If you wait 2 weeks until after your meeting to put in your meeting report and feverishly do all of that, you will get it confused with the other meetings that you have going on. You will misplace your notes. You will forget things. It's just human nature. So if you can manage to do what CN is doing, a lot of people do it well. And once you get comfortable, it is the ideal situation and it makes it easier for everybody. Definitely do not do the opposite and wait until the very, very end. Every year we get facilitators who will tell us like, I never got the meeting notes from the note taker. I never got this from this person. I've lost these things. My dog ate my homework, whichever. We also are not at that meeting. And so the expectation that we set for you is if you've lost the meeting notes or if you never received the meeting notes, because you have set the meeting to record, you will have to watch the meeting over again and it is transcribed, but CN and I are not going to sit through 3 or 4 hours of each meeting to replicate what needs to be done. That is your responsibility as the meeting facilitator.
Yes. So the one other thing that I would add to that is reach out, ask each other. If you've got questions, if you know, this group is doing the same job in their own location. So as you get through and you're moving through, if you find out that, you know, Patty facilitated music last year and you're not quite understanding what was done, reach out to Patty and ask Patty what was done, you know. Make sure, remember that it's 2 weeks. All of this information is due 2 weeks within the 2-week window at the conclusion of a meeting. And that includes the proposed matrix changes, entering all of those in. All of that is due within 2 weeks. Not throw the meeting report in, upload the meeting notes, upload the attendance sheet, and then, whew, I bought myself some time. I can get to those proposed changes when I have a minute. Nope, doesn't work that way. Has to be done at the time you upload everything and submit the meeting report, because everyone on your screens right now are waiting for that. So when you delay your proposed matrix changes for a couple of weeks, you're delaying the 28 people that are on this call from executing their jobs. So you might be waiting for a minute until you have a minute and when it's convenient for you in your schedule. But if everyone did that, the wheels would fall off of the system. So it's you know, Kelly's talked about natural tendencies. There's little things that I like to procrastinate. That would be one of them, because I always need a little pocket of time in order to get some of those things that are a little harder to get myself to do accomplished. But if you will do that, it might be 2 weeks of discomfort, but then you're in the clear and you're done and you don't have to worry about it anymore. And you know, no one's waiting on you, and you know, you're not going to be getting emails from me saying, where is it? Where is it? So it's a change in mindset for some, and just shifting things a little closer to the front end of that 2-week window. So I also want you to know that I really appreciate everything that you guys do. I have learned a tremendous amount from everyone that I have worked with thus far, and I pick up a little special extra tips from different people along the way, and I implement them and use them to improve my own skills. So I think between this, everyone, the talents of everyone in this group, I think we pretty much have it covered for every instance that we could possibly come up against. I think we've got it covered. So. Kelly, you're muted. Kelly, you're muted.
Thank you. See, so Cian and I do this all the time, and we still make little mistakes. And so even in your own meeting, if you have cues or ways that you can work with your chair to make sure that you call that out, or you watch that for your own meeting. I mute myself all the time and forget to unmute myself. But I just wanted to echo what Cian said. We know that this is a big task for you guys, right? This is 100% of what Cian and I do. We do this work all the time, not facilitating meetings, but the statewide transfer work. And we know that you wear multiple hats and fulfill multiple roles at your colleges. By serving in this role and by serving as a meeting facilitator, it is critically important that we all work together, because your role as a meeting facilitator sends out all the other work to everybody as institutional facilitators, and then institutional facilitators send everything back to the meeting and we send back out. And that's how it works, where we all have to work together. And so I just want to make clear a few expectations, just so things that we've seen in the past, so that we make sure that we all understand what your role will be. So the meetings that you have been assigned, Cian has sent those out. In previous years, we waited until the training retreat to assign those and work on them, but Cian has worked with each of you to assign meetings. They've been built in the virtual binder. I don't know how you manage your own calendar, but like my Outlook calendar is my life, and my Happy Planner is my life. If I don't put it in my calendar, I'm totally going to forget it. So make sure that those dates are on your calendar. Make sure that those work against anything that you have at your college or that you have in your personal life that you don't realize tomorrow that's actually your 8-year-old's birthday and you're planning to go to Disneyland and you're not going to be available. We don't want to know that the day before the meeting. Right? So make sure that you're available. Like Cian and I both mentioned, if you're able to block time out on your calendar for the hour or two after the meeting to just finish out that meeting report while it's fresh in your mind and get that done, that's going to be a lot easier for you in the long run. If unforeseen circumstances do arise, and if things happen that you haven't planned for, you're going to have to think quickly on your feet, because the meetings are virtual, the expectation should be that you are in a place that day where you have reliable internet. If you don't have reliable internet where you are, you'll need to have a backup plan to go to campus, to go to an office, to go to a place where you can use reliable internet. I've found over the last year and a half, it works best if you're hardwired into internet and not relying on Wi-Fi, but Wi-Fi can work also. We have had several examples last year where people had internet issues, facilitators had internet issues, and there was no way around that. They couldn't get anywhere fast enough. And so we had to cancel and reschedule the meeting. I can tell you that's okay. In the grand scheme of things, it's not the end of the world, but a bunch of faculty aren't really happy, and they're not unhappy at the facilitator. They're unhappy at me, and they're unhappy at AZTransfer. And so do plan, if you're going to be up in your cabin for that weekend, or if you're going to be somewhere else and you're still facilitating this meeting, that's your prerogative, whatever you've decided to do with your supervisor, but make sure you have reliable internet. Test it out a couple days before. Test it out again the night before. Plan to log into your meeting an hour before. If you have issues, Cian and I are not able to troubleshoot any of your technical issues. We might be able to tell you how to better log into Zoom, but like the combination of things that might occur with your internet access at home or work, or what you're doing on your screen, we have 7 or 8 meetings that run simultaneously, and the 2 of us can't support all of that. And so we're hopeful over the next couple months and the additional check-in that we'll do in August, all of you will become at least familiar enough with Zoom. The pandemic also really helped with that too, because Zoom is how we do a lot of things. But if you've never led a Zoom meeting, it's very different than participating in a Zoom meeting. When you have an active role to do that, it's very, very different. Also, if life does come up, if there is an illness in your family, if there is unfortunate circumstances, a death or something else that immediately comes up, it is your responsibility to find an alternate facilitator to cover your meeting. We are not in a position at the night before to find a facilitator and bribe them or negotiate or persuade them to take on your meeting. We have had circumstances like that in the past. I am a family first person. Family always comes first. But we cannot triage and figure that out quickly enough. So if something happens, you might want to make those relationships ahead of time, or you might want to have a backup just in case, because, you know, life does happen, especially right now, a lot of life happens, but it will be your responsibility to either work with somebody in your institution to cover your meeting or to find another facilitator. And when I say another person in your institution, I mean somebody in this group that is trained and knows how to do it. But to have them cover your meeting and then let us know, because there are a lot of things that have to change. With Zoom, we have to change permissions so that that person can access the meeting. We have to change passwords on things so that that person can change the meeting. We have to make sure that the chair is aware. So again, totally know that life happens. And again, I respect, you know, you can be replaced at work, you can't be replaced at home. So that is always, you know, my first priority, and I respect that for everybody else as well. But logistically, because we have almost 50 meetings occurring in the months of September, October, and November, we're really relying on you to be able to cover that. Questions about meeting assignments, coverage, expectations for being available, and having your internet access and your Zoom all figured out. Okay, CN, we are almost right back on track with our agenda time. Do you want me to introduce the news from the field, or would you like to, CN? You want me to do it? Okay. So we mentioned earlier that several of the facilitators in the room have been doing this for a period of time, and have, you know, the ATF meeting, the majority of it has stayed identical. We have changed a lot of different things. We have changed nuanced pieces. We've changed a lot of the logistics, but the meat of the ATF meeting has stayed the same. And I think a lot of the culture and the dynamic of the ATF meeting stays the same, right? Going into a room with 20 or 30 faculty that are really, really excited about chemistry, that never changes, right? People in the, let's see, the philosophy ATF, a lot of those faculty have been doing this for 20, maybe even in some cases 30 years. And so some of those things never change. But we've called on 3 of our senior facilitators, Patty, Alicia, and Kathy, to share different things. And so at least what I recorded is Patty's going to talk about what works best. Then Alicia's going to talk about her biggest nightmare related to the ATFs. My biggest nightmare has nothing to do with an ATF meeting, but your biggest ATF nightmare. And then Kathy's going to talk about strengthening vulnerabilities. All right, take it away, Patty. Oh, you're muted.
Sorry.
It happens to the best.
Yeah, okay, can everybody hear me now? So when CN asked me to speak on a topic, I chose what I have found works best. And my initial thought was to mention those items that will make your lives easier when facilitating a meeting. And I even made a list. Now, this is going to be kind of redundant because CN and Kelly just spoke about all of these things. But I'll just mention again, from an ATF facilitator that's been doing this for a while. The first thing is to prepare. And it just sounds so simple, but review the past minutes. So when you go on the AZTransfer dashboard for that ATF, go into the past minutes for the last 2 or 3 years. Because like Kelly mentioned, things come up at ATF meetings over and over and over again. And trust me, the faculty get really cranky about it. Review the CEG to the best of your ability. You can't go over everything. Look at the CCM, look at the EEG, learn your acronyms. Okay, number 2, get the note taker's name and email address before you leave the meeting. I'm those people that has been waiting for note takers minutes before I can get the report ready and sent in. Number 3, prepare the report right away. And I think like CN said, I mean, I've done it all different ways throughout the years. I used to wait until the end and kind of just do them all at once. We used to have also different timelines. I don't think it was 2 weeks. I think we just had an end date. That is so not the way to do it. Get it done right away, because Kelly and CN are right. You're never going to remember what happened. And number 4, send out those Zoom recordings to the group right after the meeting. So that was my initial thought. However, I just want to bring up another thing that I think that works best with AZTransfer overall, and that is relationships and collaboration. And we have lost some of this in the last year, but I think it will come back. And you can see it at the in-person ATF meetings between the faculty. They sit down and talk about their discipline, and mostly about transfer, but not always. And they establish those contacts that they may not need today, but they might in the future. And likewise, you are going to gain these relationships with this group. And again, mostly regarding transfer, but not always. And like Kelly mentioned yesterday at the retreats, forming these relationships over an iced tea or a martini at dinner is a lot easier. But I guarantee you what you don't need somebody for today, and I don't just mean need like we're all using each other, but you are going to depend on these people in the future. And we do depend on each other. I do not know how many times I have emailed Alicia or Kathy or Elena and asked them how their institution handles an issue. And also you'll see certain group emails go out to the entire AZ Facilitator group and say, hey, for instance, we are rewriting our curriculum manual, and I'd like to know what your institution does about this, and kind of taking a poll of each other. And I think as you're learning the system, please feel like you can reach out to someone in the group for help. One of us old timers or even the newbies can work together. And if we can't help, we'll try to find somebody at our institution that can. So again, I just think the relationships are what really works best with AZTransfer.
Thank you, Patty. And I'm glad to hear you say that relationships are such a key part. I never know if other people feel that or if that's how I just always approach work. I'm always interested in the relational aspect and the collegiality of working together because, you know, the individual parts that make up the whole are always greater than us working individually. And it may take a year or two or three to build those relationships, but also to understand the value of those relationships and to understand and appreciate the value of the network that we've established here in Arizona to work together, and how each of us, even though our jobs are so specific to our institutions, there's a lot of overlap between what we do and the ability to streamline a lot of that together. So thank you for sharing that, Patty. Next, Alicia, I'm super curious to know what your biggest ATF nightmare is. So take it away.
Okay, can you hear me okay? Okay, well, it was the prompt that CN gave us a list of prompts and I picked this one. And an ATF meeting was not originally my biggest nightmare. I didn't think it was, but it turned out to be. And I don't want to tell you this because I realize that there's like 17 of you that are new, I guess. And I don't want to tell you this to scare you, but I learned a lot of lessons from this nightmare. First of all, my biggest nightmare was actually when I was a teacher, and I would have this nightmare where I would show up in my classroom and and all the kids were there, and there would be nothing, like no books, no paper. I didn't have any lesson plans, and I was stuck with all my kids for like a whole day with nothing to do. And that was like truly a scary thing, you know. I always had everything planned. Anyway, so then when I went to higher ed, I didn't think I had to worry about that anymore until this one particular ATF meeting when I was new. And it was an in-person meeting. It's like 10 years ago. I had, you know, done everything prior to the meeting. I arranged for the room, which was South Campus. You know, I made sure there was a screen, computer, phone, everything. And when I spoke to the lady on the phone, she assured me that everything was going to be there and ready for me that day. And so I know you can already figure out what's going to happen. So I arrived on the day of the meeting and the room was totally empty. There were actually desks and chairs, but none of the technology was there. So she told me the computer was all ready and everything. There was no screen, there was no conference phone, there was nothing. And so I mean, literally went into panic mode and started running around the building, trying to get somebody to help me, but I really didn't have any luck. The lady was not there. She'd called in sick that day. And I didn't bring a laptop. This was like 10 years ago. She told me the computer was in the room and everything. Anyway, people started to arrive and I was like going into panic. I finally was able to get a screen. And then like one of the ATF members had a laptop, which, you know, like 10 years ago, people pretty much brought pens and paper to a meeting. Maybe like one or two had a laptop. Anyway, so he said I could use the laptop, but the thing was it was a Mac. And oh my, that was just, I tried so hard to get that thing to work because being a PC person, I just, you know, and I had gotten a screen, so I finally got it to project, but things like even minimizing the screen or closing out, they were just watching me like feel so inadequate with this Mac computer. I didn't even know how to do the tiniest things. And I was so planned and ready to. Anyway, so I mean, I had backup, which wasn't compatible. I just, it was a nightmare. So, you know, I just said, fine. Okay, I'm going to sit down. I'm going to tell you about the PowerPoint. Luckily, I had hard copies. And I went through the slide, like slide by slide, and just told the group. And I said, and now this was engineering, the engineering ATF, by the way. Anyway, I said, I'm just gonna, you know what, we're just gonna sit down and talk engineering. And they were like, yes. And I had made paper copies, thank goodness, of like the matrices. And I said, you're gonna pass these around, you're gonna fill out everything, you know, for your institution, and we're just going to talk. And they just had, I mean, these long, deep, lengthy, active discussions. When I was busy, like in panic mode with technology, they were busy like connecting, building relationships. And then it was such a deep discussion. I mean, it was just, finally, the time was finally up, and it was the biggest nightmare. And they were like, somebody said, this is the best ATF meeting ever. And I was thinking, what? And they were all thanking me. They're like, yes, this was so good. Can we do this every time? And then I was just like, how can that be? How can this be the best? This is my worst. But anyway, I guess I learned right then and there that, you know, you might have everything planned so perfectly and you're all, you know, and you'll get so wrapped up into the details of how things work. But really, just remember to stop and look around and pay attention to your audience. They're really there because they're excited to talk about teaching with other faculty around the state, especially if they drove across the state. Just make sure you allow that time for them to build relationships, talk about curriculum, talk about transfer. And, you know, I guess usually what I try to do is the meetings are usually from 10 to 2. So I usually try to spend the 10 to noon, you know, on the statewide update and the AZTransfer stuff, do like a half and half. And then the other half, make sure they get their time. But then a couple other things I learned is just trust no one on the technology. Always go to the room ahead of time, or if it's Zoom, you know, practice, practice, practice. Only you can do this for yourself, and you know, so you just have to do it yourself. And I always go like the day before now, or you know, the week before, whatever. I'll do anything to make sure that doesn't happen to me again. And sometimes you just have to ride the waves. You just have to do what you can do with what you have. And you can turn a nightmare into a positive experience for others. Just remember to connect with your audience, pay attention to them, and good luck.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Alicia. You know, so many of us, if we've only done virtual meetings, we don't know the panic that sits in your heart and your brain as you go into a meeting, not knowing what to expect, because many meetings may not be at institutions that you work at. So when we go into meetings in person, a lot of us are assigned maybe meetings at our home campus, but a lot of times they're different meetings around the state because your own institution may not be hosting a meeting. And I have a similar, not nearly as bad as that, but a similar like going in and nobody even knew we were having an ATF meeting that day. Nothing was set up. And so it sounds like you really were able to turn that around, and it just goes to show that two people can experience the exact same situation with a completely different script and a completely different reaction. So Zoom comes with its own set of circumstances and challenges, but there's nothing like showing up to one of those meetings in person and feeling completely out of control.
Right.
All right, thank you, Alicia. Kathy, strengthening vulnerabilities.
Thanks. Yeah, on piggybacking on what you guys were just talking about, that can definitely happen even if you plan ahead, even if you go and test everything out and stuff, and it certainly happened to me too. So for all of you newer facilitators, I think having the meetings be completely online is actually a little bit of an advantage. I think it's a little bit more challenging when you have some people in person and some people online, which I imagine we're going to go back to eventually. But for your first, if it's your first year, then I think having it just online is going to be an advantage for you. So some of the vulnerabilities that I thought through, like in my experience, probably the biggest one was feeling like I needed to be the source of information or be in control, like be on top of things and lead that meeting, even though I know there's a chair, but we're responsible for making it all work. And some chairs are a little bit less hands-on than others and less proactive than others. So I kind of felt like, okay, I just got to make sure that we've got, that all the tasks are covered and everything. And so I think to strengthen or like turn around that vulnerability would be not to be so task oriented. Yes, we do need to get those tasks done. So I'm not taking anything away from that. I mean, we definitely need to do everything that's on the agenda and make sure that our resources are accurate and up to date for students and advisors and faculty and everything. But I think that pulling back a little bit and really listening to the group before the meeting and what they want and what's in the agenda, looking back at the meeting notes from past years to see what's been discussed and make sure that what they've wanted in the past to be changed has in fact been changed. That's important. And so during the meeting, you can make it go smoothly, but don't feel responsible for every little aspect of the meeting. It's really their meeting, and let the group have the discussion that they want to have the most. And I always tell them, when they're providing institutional updates and curricular updates about their institutions, this is the most important part of the meeting that you all can share with each other. And this is why we do this. So that way they know that the resources are something we need to do, but the most important part is the connection. And then another vulnerability that I've experienced and learned from over the years is that when you have multiple meetings that you're facilitating, it's hard sometimes to keep track of, okay, who did I reach out to already and where am I in that planning? Who's going to reach out to the group with the call for agenda items? Sometimes the chair wants you to do some of those things, and sometimes they really want to do like almost everything. And so although the roles are defined, sometimes you need to say, okay, we need to get this done, and so it's, I found that making a checklist, and I have a checklist that I'm willing to share with the group too. If, I can send it to Kelly and Cian and see if they think that's okay, because it's just as an example like of how I handle it. I actually print the thing out, and I have all, in this case, like for last year, I had 4 ATFs, and it has all the contact information for the people, for the host and the chairs, and then it has before the meeting and the tasks, and then not during the meeting because that's on the agenda, but before the meeting and all the tasks listed out, and then after the meeting and all the tasks listed out. And then for each one of those, I can make notes on that hard copy for myself so I know where I am in the process with each one. to make sure that I'm not mixing up the ATFs with each other. One year I had 6. And so I think that was probably the year I invented the checklist. And then I guess that's probably it. Yeah, I think experience helps, and plan ahead the best you can, and just remember to that the connections are the most important thing.
Great. Thank you, Kathy. And Kathy, you do bring up a couple things that I hadn't thought to include on the agenda today for the new folks. But in terms of like the communications, both you and CN had referenced, we, AZTransfer, me specifically, I do send out notifications on a schedule timeline based off of meeting date. So one of the first things I will send out is a reminder email to the facilitator. It's all templated. It has all of the information that you need, but I send that out about 6 weeks before the ATF meeting. So you will get a reminder, hey, Kathy, you agreed to do the chemistry ATF meeting. Here is the date. Here is the chair. Here's the host. Then the following week after that, I send an email to the chair and I identify to the chair, hey, you agreed to chair this meeting. Kathy will be facilitating. If you have questions, Kathy will be reaching out to you. Both of you are on the email because I copied Kathy on the email. Just a reminder, here are your tasks and your responsibilities as the chair. In a year that we would have a physical host, because we don't have hosts this year as virtual, I would also send an email to the host. Hey, thank you for agreeing to host the ATF meeting at Paradise Valley Community College. Kathy is facilitating the meeting. If you have any questions about what materials and supplies and equipment you need to have set up, or how to cater lunch, Kathy is included on this email. Please be in touch. And then 30 days before the ATF meeting, or maybe I do it after I do the chair and the host. I don't remember the exact days. Some of those might be predated, but I send an email to all of the ATF faculty, reminding them about the ATF meeting, including who is the facilitator. If you have questions, Kathy is facilitating the meeting. A lot of people think I personally am at those meetings because I send the email, but Kathy will be available for this meeting. If you have questions, here's how you can RSVP. We hope to see you for a great meeting, and send all of that out. You can work with your chair ahead of time, especially if that chair is a faculty at your college that you know or you've developed a relationship with. But those emails will serve as a cue and a reminder to you to get started. Do not wait till the day before the meeting to reach out to your chair. So thank you for reminding me about that, Kathy, because I think, yeah, each chair has a different personality. I'm thinking of several different chairs. Some of these chairs have chaired the ATF meetings, like that specific one, like I'm thinking about Cheryl with physics, has chaired the ATF meeting for, I think, like 15 years now for the physics ATF. And she likes to do it a certain way, and that's awesome. Languages ATF, David Ruby, same way. I think he's chaired for 4 or 5 years. Other ATFs, they have a schedule and they rotate the chair every year based on institution. Other chairs, they just kind of feel like they got suckered into doing it, or are going to pretend like they didn't remember they were the chair. We do reach out every March and April and confirm with each chair. Hey, just a reminder, you agreed to chair when you met last year. We want to make sure before you leave for the summer that you have this on your radar and you're still planning to chair the meeting. And it's up to you to create that relationship. Okay, any other questions? Anybody else that has had experience? Some of you still have done this for 3 or 4 years. Any of you that have anything else you want to share, tips? Things you wish you would have done differently, things that caught you off guard, things that weren't what you were expecting?
No, but I did want to bring up, you just mentioned Cheryl with physics. This is Patty again. And when I first started years ago, for one thing, you go into one of those physics meetings and they have a podium set up at the front of the room, and you're expected to speak from the podium and a microphone, and so do they. And that just terrifies me. I'm terrible at it. I mean, I can tell about my most embarrassing moment at one of those meetings. But the funniest thing that ever happened to me, and I didn't even know how to handle it, was when we first started the sun system. That's been a number of years ago. They actually developed, physics developed their own sun numbering system outside of what was already developed for them. And I did not know how to handle that. I was just like, okay, I'll write all that down. So anyways, just for you, and you're right, every chair is different. they all flow differently. You have some faculty that are going to know way more than you do, even about AZTransfer. I love it. I kind of try to let them sort of run their own meetings. Sometimes you'll go to a meeting, I don't know, Kathy can probably speak to this too, and Alicia, but you'll go to a meeting, they expect you to just run everything as the facilitator. And other meetings, they know their role and it's much better, but you just kind of have to go with the flow in those things.
Yeah. And Patty, you're just, as you guys are each saying different things, it's just reminding me of different aspects for a brand new person that would be helpful. Is every year it seems like there's some hot topic or something. I'm just remembering in like 2017 when the Higher Learning Commission came out with new faculty credentials and people want to talk about that. This year, I'm thinking it's going to be SB 1453, community colleges' ability to offer 4-year degrees and baccalaureate degrees. We don't want to control, manage, or censor any of that conversation other than we want to get through the AZTransfer business first. We want to get through those matrices. We want to get through all of those dashboards first, and then allow for the discussion at the end. And you as the facilitator don't need to have the answers to those questions. You just record what is appropriate or related to AZTransfer. But like Alicia, Kathy, and Patty have all said, some of these people have worked together for decades. Some of them know each other in other professional affiliations and circles. This is their livelihood. This is their job. In most cases, it's also their passion, but there's always something that they want to talk or discuss that has nothing to do with AZTransfer. And that's okay, because we're the only place that this group convenes on an annual basis, bringing together the community colleges, the tribal colleges, and the universities. So don't feel pressure like you need to do all this research on which colleges are going to offer 4-year degrees, AZTransfer's position on that, how we're going to handle that, what we're going to do. If people bring up questions, you can just say, hey, note taker, will you write that down? I'll be sure to ask AZTransfer about that. But you can really kind of just, you know, not literally wave your white flag, but like say, you know, this is your discussion, and allow the chair to handle it. And a lot of those things, those problems aren't going to be your responsibility to resolve.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, facilitate the meeting and be sure that you are keeping it on track, because sometimes it can go off track and those 4-hour meetings can go over. You'll start to like just gauge if you think, and then try to rein them back in and get the AZTransfer stuff done, because it becomes really hard for the note taker. They're not sure what they're supposed to be writing down and all of that. It becomes a really long recorded meeting when they go off track. Reminding them that the meeting is recorded sometimes helps to bring them back in. But yeah, it's an open place for them to talk, but they can definitely go off track, and you can be caught in a meeting that goes way past that 4 hours. So keep them online so you can get everything you need to get done and recorded.
Yeah, absolutely. You would think like, oh my gosh, who wants to possibly meet more than 4 hours? But there are some people, and I think it's tied to the discipline. Like, you know, the communicators, the philosophers, you know, the literary people. Some people really, really, really don't mind long meetings. And then there are other ATFs. The 10 to 2 is kind of the standard. But there are other groups that have found like, hey, we'd rather meet 9 to 11, or we'd rather meet 1 to 3. Some groups combine their ATF with another group, like political science and history. They're usually back to back because it's a lot of the same people. And some people really like to work it out, and some people want to just get down to business and get done with it and move on with the rest of their life. So you'll get a good sense of that. And there will be some ATFs that you'll say, once you've done it, you never want to do that ATF again. I think the 4 or 5 of you that have done it for a long time, there are certain ones that you're like, please don't ever assign me that group again. And there are other groups that you're like, you know what, I really, really like that. Can I please do that one? I don't care where it is. I don't care if I have to drive to Chinle or Sierra Vista or Bullhead City. I am going to be with that group because I love that group. And that's really just the nature of the game. There are a lot of really fun people. There are really a lot of interesting people. It's a great case study, honestly. I'm going to turn it over to CN to wrap up with our ATF season task review. We do have Q&A after that, but I did mention that I wanted to talk a bit about the CEG course title not found. We did make some amendments to the directions that were included in the handbook and policy manual and can walk people through that when we're done after the Q&A section as well.
Thank you, Kelly. You know, this is going to be really fast because we've been very thorough today. I just wanted to bring everyone back to these two sections of the chat lines very quickly and make sure that there are no questions or unresolved issues. I know, oops, I didn't mean to do that, sorry. I know that we're going to be coming back to this one. Kelly's going to bring us back to this shortly. But in these other issues in the preseason annual tasks, you know, we threw a lot at you yesterday. I believe that everything in the ATF season task category, I believe all of that was none, there were no surprises there. I'm certain there were no surprises there. But there might have been some surprises or some complicated processes in the preseason annual tasks. We threw a lot at you. You've had 24 hours to ruminate on it, to go through, kind of check things on your own. Are there any residual questions specifically in this preseason annual task with the exclusion of number 4, because Kelly's going to be reviewing that shortly, or in the ATF season tasks, in any of those with deadlines, with expectations, with anything? Or are we set and ready to roll for this upcoming season? And I'm sharing my screen so I can only see 5 people. So if you have something you want to address, just start talking.
Hi, this is Mitzi. I have a question. Can you just talk a little bit about how an institution might choose to make a program no program status, and how you would go about requesting that?
Yes, so that is actually in, basically to request it, all you would do is email me and say, please make it no program.
Okay.
So basically the no program status, that category or that decision-making process of whether a discipline is going to be considered no program by an institution or not, actually shows up twice on this chat line. It shows up the first time right here, number 1, review no program status. And it shows up a second time right here in the the no program verification. So basically in the review no program status, let me go through this one more time. And I don't remember how I signed in. I think I signed in as myself though. So it's probably, we'll see what I get here. Okay, so everyone will link to this page on the ATF preseason tasks. This is the same page, everyone gets it, regardless of what institution you represent. This tells you the trend in the state of what programs are considered no program for who. For your particular institution, you would look at it and determine, do we offer courses in this program? Do we offer associate's degrees in this discipline? Do we offer content? I'm gonna take us into this right here. I'm gonna sign in as myself really quick. And let's go into, all right, I'm just gonna hit the dashboards. I probably could have done this another way. Let me think, let's go into dance. We'll go into the dance matrix.
Ian, can you make your screen any bigger?
Yes, let me see here. Okay, there is also a place where you guys can make it bigger on your end as well. If you go up to, I believe it is in the menu across the top, there's a more, or down at the bottom, maybe your navigation is down at the bottom. There's a place where you can look at your view or more, and you can blow it up on your end as well, if that is helpful. Is that better? Can you see that? Have I blown it up enough?
Yeah.
Okay. So this is a perfect example because dance is not a program that a lot of institutions offer. In fact, there's several that don't offer, they're considered no program in dance, which, by the way, Mitzi, in answer to your question, you decide it. This is a decision that you make. I don't make it, Kelly doesn't make it. We feel like the institutions have way more information on their programs than we do, and we completely leave that open and up to you to make the decision. So these are probably the things that I would ask myself. I would look at it and I would say, okay, you know what? We don't offer anything. This is only, there's only one class that we're trying to transfer or coordinate transfer with. And I'm from Dene, or I'm from Cochise, or I'm from Coconino, and we don't offer anything that has to do with it. This is a no-brainer. So we're no program. And so I'm going to shoot off an email to CN that says, okay, we're no program in dance, so make sure you put us down as no program in dance. However, there are some that are significantly more confusing than that. For example, I'm trying to think of a good one. Shout out ones, maybe film and media, maybe family studies and consumer sciences. I probably should have chosen that one. Psychology?
Anthropology.
Okay. Anthropology. All right, let's go to that one, because this is not going to give me what I need either.
Maybe social work too.
Okay, this is a great one, because in anthropology, there's many institutions that, well, see, pretty much everyone still offers anthropology classes and coursework. So maybe so let me tell you, because I would have prepped this to have had a better idea, but let me tell you what we're looking for. We're looking for a matrix that's unrelated. So for example, if in anthropology, if everyone was transferring, if the group had determined that anthropology requires some kind of sociology, okay? Well, every institution offers a sociology class, right? So there might be an institution that does not offer an anthropology program, but they do offer sociology, and anthropology utilizes a sociology course in order to further their anthropology program. So an instance like that, even though an institution doesn't offer anthropology, they're still on the grid. They still have data on the grid because they're offering data that exists on this matrix. Well, the institution might not really want to send someone. That might be very difficult. See, I can't navigate because I've got this toolbar because I'm the one sharing my screen. My apologies on this. It might be difficult for them to navigate it, and that might not be an ATF that they want to send anyone to, but they are on the grid. So if they don't send faculty to that ATF, they still have to be responsible to clean out all of that data. So the question is, if you are sending your sociology, see, psychology isn't a good one either, because it really is. Sociology is usually the one that keeps showing up. Well, sociologists, your faculty that do sociology, it doesn't make any sense for them to go to every single ATF that utilizes a sociology equivalency and to sit in the back to throw in their 2 cents on the discussion about their sociology equivalency that is exactly 1% of the entire meeting. And it would make you bankrupt if you sent that sociology professor to every single institution or ATF meeting that utilizes that. That doesn't make any sense at all. So we leave it in your hands to determine, do we offer enough courses? Are we on the grid enough? I'm just going to call it on the grid enough. Are you represented in these matrices enough that you can rationalize sending faculty? If the answer is yes, then you have a program. If the answer is no, then we allow you to consider yourself no program. You aren't expected to send faculty there. It's not punitive if you don't have faculty representation, because that no program badge is like your get out of jail free card. However, then you have a responsibility to make sure that all of these matrices are cleaned up, that you're not sending faculty to. Does that make sense, Mitzi? And I'm sure that Kelly wants to add some things because I think I probably completely butchered that explanation.
You didn't.
No,
You
that
didn't
helps.
butcher it at all. Sorry, I didn't mean to speak over you, Mitzi. See, and you didn't butcher it at all. And I'm just thinking about what really predicated this whole example. And some of the work that we did really were some of the smaller colleges that were sending 7 or 8 faculty to the same, or we're sending one faculty to 7 or 8 different meetings. And a lot of that has changed because of the HLC faculty credentialing guidelines of each of your institutions has cleaned up your programs and changed your catalog offerings. But I remember, I can't even remember her name, but it was a Central Arizona College faculty member. And she was going to humanities, history, political science, sociology, English, and something, like she was the person for 7 or 8 different ATF meetings. And at some point, you know, because we also do an ATF attendance report and we measure and report on attendance, and Central Arizona College didn't want to have non-attendance reported for their ATFs. But we've changed that with these no program verifications where faculty aren't available, not just because there's a scheduling conflict, but if you don't have faculty in that area, the facilitator, like Cian said, can fill in those blanks and be responsible for that. The same as like, I think this is still true, Michael, but at Northland Pioneer College, you don't have a physics faculty member. Well, we don't want to continually ding you year over year over year because you don't have a physics faculty to not send somebody to the physics ATF or to not send somebody to the dance ATF. We establish no program, but then each year you verify, nope, we still don't have any classes in that area. Nope, we don't have any equivalencies in that area. Nope, we don't have a faculty in that area.
Okay, so this is a perfect example of ethnic studies. So we've got a couple of institutions here that I would bet that EAC probably does not have an ethnic studies program. I would bet that TOCC likely does not. Mojave might not. But look at all of the different interdisciplines that are pulled in. We've got sociology classes here. We've got anthropology classes here. We've got English courses here. We've got another sociology class here. For coachees, they're on the grid in exactly 2 places, sociology 212 and sociology 160. Does it make sense for coachees to consider themselves having a program? Well, they're on the grid, so they really have to be responsible for that information, but does that warrant them sending faculty to sit in this ethnic studies ATF year over year over year when all they have, you know, from their perspective is these 2 courses that transfer? So it took me a minute to find one, but here's a good example. Does that make sense, Mitzi, and anyone else who had that question?
See, I have a question. This is Shirley.
Okay.
We no longer have anthropology or women and gender because our faculty member retired and we left them on we left the courses in there until just this last April, and we made them inactive. So I would just shoot you an email and let you know that we no longer have that program.
Yep, that's exactly what you would do. So that's why this is on here twice. It seems very redundant, but preseason annual tasks, we ask you to go through and review everything you're considered no program for and everything you're considered having a program for. And it's a reset. We're going to reset. Last year was last year. This year is this year. And so come August 15th, when ATF season is full force, you guys are going to get me all your information and let me know here's what changed, or nothing changed, and so I'm not going to hear from you. So I'm going to redo some of the coding, and I'm going to reset you from having a program to not having a program, or not having a program to having a program. And then we're going to go through the season, and attendance is going to be what attendance is. If you are considered no program, you can still send faculty. That doesn't mean you can't send them. We encourage everyone who wants to attend those ATF meetings to contribute to the conversation and build the program from where you are. You know, you got to start somewhere if this is something that you've got your eyes on. So just because you're considered no program does not mean faculty cannot attend. What it means is faculty cannot be given credit for attending. So that's why we ask for the reset right here in the preseason annual tasks. So you declare whether you're program or no program. If you're no program, that means send all the faculty you want, but they will not get credit for attending. Then at the end of the season, we generate our attendance report. We report on who attended and who did not. If faculty attended for an ATF that is considered no program, they are not included on the attendance report. Instead, what's included on the attendance report is NP for no program, because this is where you communicate that to me by August 15th. All those decisions need to be made before the season occurs. Then at the end of the season, you fill out the reports in this no program verification. And for anything that was considered no program, you clean all of that up as we have done in the past. And then guess what? It's a reset, and you get to drop back down here at the end of the season and go through this decision again. That's why we put the due date August 15th. Many of these preseason annual tasks, you can get in there and do in April. You can get in there and do in May. You can get in there and do in June and July. You can do it all during the year. So when season ends, you really don't have any of these critical tasks to do before the next season begins, but not number one. Number one should be done as close to the beginning of the start of the season as possible, because a lot can change between February 18th and August 15th. And this is, it'll take you not very long to do. You go in, you just double check everything, and then we're squared away, we're set, we've got the right coding, and we're ready to go into the season strong without having to second guess anything. Does that make sense?
It does. Can I make a comment too, CN?
Yes.
Because I don't know if the newer people would know this, but the relationship between the Common Course Matrix and the major guides, and that this is where the information is populated for students to view and advisors, because I know some people think that, oh, I don't have a program, for instance, in family studies or fashion. Like, we have nothing at Yavapai College that says put together these classes. However, if you look at the matrix, the Common Course Matrix, we would want that to populate on the major guide, because there are a number of courses, sociology or psychology, that they can apply if they are planning to transfer into the university.
Right.
And Patty, I think that's, oh, go ahead, Sam.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say that's a great point, because what's often missed by faculty and sometimes even the facilitators is these tools, these matrices are the back end of student facing tools. Students don't see this matrix. Students don't see all of these tables and all of these reports. If we have enough time at the end, I can show the student tools to the new folks so you guys can see what that looks like. But if you don't have a program or you don't have courses, the major guide for dance still populates at your college, but it says course not available at your college, or course not available at this location. But it still shows students that dance is an option, and there are bachelor's degrees in dance and performance, but you will need to take those courses at another institution beyond the AJAC. Okay. Go ahead, Sam.
So anything else on the chat lines, ATF season tasks or preseason annual tests, or are we set? We good?
See, and
Beautiful.
I have one question.
Oh, okay.
I'm always fuzzy on the difference between members of the ATF and people who are just on the listserv. I know there's a way to differentiate in here, like, which one that is, but how is actually considered a member? And
okay.
knows most of this for us, as you know, so I just don't know.
Okay, so I am going to show you what comes up. We're now going to add a group to this new person, and we're going to make it be agriculture. Okay, the standards are sitting right here in this particular function. And in a nutshell, so you can take the time and read through all of these, but in a nutshell, here's how it is. In order to be an alternate, a member, or a lead member of an ATF, you have to be faculty. Only faculty can be members of an ATF. Everyone else is either going to be a liaison or a listserv only. Liaison will populate all of these. The alternate, the lead member, and the member will all populate within the RSVP, as will the affiliation of liaison. That populates within the RSVP for the ATF as well. And all of them get everything, all communication that's sent out is on the listserv. All four of those do: alternate, lead member, member, liaison. But in order to be a member or a lead member or an alternate of the ATF, you have to be faculty. If you're not faculty, you can still attend the meetings, you can still contribute, but you would be considered a liaison. Then the fifth category is listserv only, and that is an affiliation. If you don't want your name to populate within the RSVP, but you're never going to go to a meeting. That's what that means, is you're never going to go to a meeting, but you want all the communication and you want to be able to communicate with everyone else in the network, then the correct affiliation would be listserv only. So all 5 of those categories receive the listserv communications, but 4 of them have to go in and RSVP, nope, not going to that meeting, nope, not going to that meeting, nope, not going to that meeting. And because of the new RSVP process that we have, I'm annoying them every day leading up to the meeting until they finally RSVP, no, I'm not going. So they actually have to respond, no, I'm not going, or have me bomb their email address, their inbox every day. So does that make sense? Does that help, Kathy? Does that differentiate it for you?
Yes, that's perfect. And we'll
Okay.
work with Molly to make sure that as we update that, they're seeing this list, if Molly doesn't already send that out, so that they can say if anything needs to be changed on it. Thank you.
Perfect. You bet. Okay, anything else, or are we good? Good to go?
Okay, so
Okay.
we have 8 minutes left. I just want to reiterate a couple things with the training, the handbook, the course title not found before we close. So I'm going to pull some of that up. I just want to be pretty explicit, if I haven't made it clear already. This ends your formal training time with us as a group. If you have not familiarized yourself with the additional trainings from last year, you are not yet complete. You are not yet done with your training. And so I went to the wrong place because, again, like I said, I can't multitask and look at myself in Zoom at the same time. But when you log in to the chat lines and you come to the virtual binder, and when you scroll down and you pick yourself and you pick your name, these facilitator training here has the facilitator training retreat from last year, day 1, day 2, and day 3. I believe it is day 2 where we did the mock ATF meeting. I believe it is day 2 where we did the Common Course matrices, where we did all the wrap up. But it is critically important that you watch these 3 videos if you have not facilitated a meeting before, so that you know what is expected of you at the ATF. These additional ATF meetings are the ATF meetings in its entirety. You can scroll through them, you can speed them up, but this is actually watching one of our group members facilitating a live meeting with faculty. I strongly, strongly encourage those of you who love dishes to pop this up on your computer or your phone while you do the dishes and watch it, or while you're folding laundry. It's going to be really boring if it's the only task that you're doing, but if you can do this in the background to get a sense of what that meeting looks like, because if you have been assigned an ATF, you are expected to do every single thing that is detailed in these meetings and every single thing that is detailed in these trainings and here. Okay, we wanted to make the most of your time and not go through that, especially for those of you who have done it over and over again. Okay. So now if we go back here to course title not found, this verification report, yesterday we talked about pulling this up. I just realized I'm not logged in as an institution. So Cian, I'm going to have to pull up your dummy. I mean, you're not a dummy, but your test, I don't know why I said dummy. Sometimes you just say words and they come out of your mouth, but your test one that is affiliated with PIMA. If we pull this up and we pull up CEG course title not found, this verification tells us what to do. We can pull the list by clicking here. We see the list of, I hope, 54 courses that have course title not found. What I did earlier was update the handbook and policy manual. Again, you can access that from the virtual binder. The virtual binder has the handbook here, handbook homepage. Also facilitator duties and responsibilities, institutional responsibilities, everything is in this one place here for you. But the handbook, if you haven't bookmarked it elsewhere, you can access here. You can scroll in the navigation here to find where it lists it, or we can just type in CEG course title not found. I just did this multitasking during the meeting when my video was not shared. Hopefully I did it right. If it has typos, it's because I did it while we were in this meeting. I'm going to toggle both of my screens so you can see it at the same time. And I apologize because it's going to be small, but oh, I think because I have it as 2 browser windows, I'm going to have to pull this one out. Okay, so the directions say view your list. We've populated the list, so you're viewing the list right here. We're right here at this step. This will display a list of courses in the CEG that do not have course titles. Step 2, enter the title name for each course missing a title through the edit CEG data. I changed that because we had called it manage CEG data. If we come back to the chat lines home, you can see in my screen that's not collapsed, edit CEG data here. Edit screens number 7, we're gonna click on that. Okay, then, I'm sorry, my little Zoom faces are right here. I should just minimize it so I can see. Enter a new browser window will open with a menu from the CEG edit screen. Select add edit CEG course bank records. That's the second one listed here. This will pop up. If the course is in the list, click edit link next to the course to make the update. So we're going to toggle back here. We're going to do AIT 295. Pima, I'm not going to go through the whole thing with you and actually save it because I want you to have the satisfaction of doing all 54 of your classes, but we're going to go to the bitter end. So I'm going to type in AIT. We recommend that you just do the prefix, not the whole thing, because it will show any AIT courses. That's not what I was expecting it to do. I was expecting it to do something different. This is the first time in a long time I've done this. So if the course is in the list, click the edit link next to the course to make updates. Remind myself it was 295. I'm going to scroll down here. 291 is the last one. I suppose we could have put the number in just to see it for sure. AIT 295 doesn't bring up anything. Here's where we're going to ask Rebecca to make an edit so that it will say like no courses found or no populating, because sometimes when I just see a blank screen like this, I think it's still working and not populating anything. But you see AIT 295 is not there. AIT 95 is not listed here. So if the course is in the list, click the edit link next to the course to make updates. So let's just pretend it was AIT 100. We would hit edit. We would change industrial safety if this had said course title not found, which it doesn't, but we would change it to industrial safety. Okay, we're not going to save this because this is not what you would have done. But if we look at number 6, if the course is not listed, so AIT 295 was the one we were actually looking for. It's not populating anything down here. We go to add a new course here. So this is not necessary. This isn't intuitive in a way that I would have designed the tool, but this is how it's been designed, that it says up here, add new course. So we're going to click add new course. We're going to put in AIT 295. I don't know what the course title is. I don't even know what AIT stands for. So I'm going to call it actuarial, if I could spell actuarial investigative training. And I'm going to say, and again, you're going to know this because you're the catalog and the curriculum expert at your institutions. Credit hours is 3. I don't know what credit hour high means, but that must mean if there's a range, like if it's a 3 to 5 credit hour class. The first year term, I think, Michael, you had this question yesterday. What if we have different terms for different courses, or it was our omnibus course and a special topics? It had certain criteria 1 year, certain criteria 1 year. Just because this populates here, don't assume this is correct. This populates to 01 in catalog year. That means spring. So there's a spring term, there's a fall term. The first 4 digits are the year. If you just started offering this in spring of 2021, this would be correct. My guess is it's probably not correct. So maybe it's 2009-07, meaning fall of 2009. And this 99999 means in perpetuity, in infinity. If that is correct, you can leave it there. If that's not correct, if it ended in spring of 2015, you would make it say that 2015-01. You should know these are standard curricular reporting for catalog years. If you don't know these, like if you don't know 07, 01, I think there's also 03 and 05, you need to check with somebody in your curriculum office because they should know those. The department name, you know, AIT or actuarial investigative training, whatever it is, you should have all that information. I'm not going to save this because this is not correct. Unless I really guess that you have an actuarial investigative training. I'm going to hit save. I'm going to go through all 54 of those courses. I'm going to populate that. When I actually do it, I'm actually going to save it. Then I'm going to go back to, this is not right, but I'm going to go back to admin home for the chat lines. We're not going to see any change here because we didn't actually change it, but I'm going to go back to course title not found. And I'm going to rerun the list. This should update in lifetime, but I'm going to go, sorry folks, I just logged in as myself. I didn't log in as test Pima. But I'm going to go back here. I'm going to run this again. If we had actually saved it, this 54 should become 53. If you do all of them in a batch, it should then be 0 and populate nothing. So I can see all your faces. I stopped my share, but I updated all of that in the handbook and policy manual. If you search course title not found, it will populate and you can walk yourself through those duties. We put in the to-do list that should be done by July 15th. That gives you about 5 weeks to get that done. There are lots and lots of tasks that you guys do that CN and I never do because we don't own curriculum, because we don't own an institution. There are some of those things I vaguely remember Rebecca training me on how to do that in 2015 when I very first started. I'm the type of person I can remember a lot of things, but if I don't do it on an active basis, I will forget how to do it. We've tried to build in as many videos, as many job aids in the handbook, as many things to walk you through that. There are going to be some small things that we haven't yet built videos for or haven't yet included in the handbook. There are also great things that you can reach out to each other if you have questions. So that's course title not found. We are now over our time. I really do like to be mindful of everybody's time. I know yesterday we had done that YouTube video and watched doorways exercise. Because there are so many of us, even though I value us individually and getting to know each other, I'm not going to ask you guys to each share. Maybe what might be fun is sending something to the facilitators listserv and sending what your acronym was and what each of those stood for. But I'm not going to have us do all of that now because that would take us another 15 or 20 minutes. But then I would also ask you to make it on a little Post-it note or put it somewhere on your screen just out of the view of the camera. It's really meant to rally you up and get you ready for that facilitating task in the ATF meeting. Oh, did you already do it, Regina? You typed it out and wrote it so you have it. I love it. I love it. And I saw in the chat, you know how to fold a fitted sheet. So someday we might have to have some Zoom time and you can do that for me. So anything else I missed? Any last closing things that we need to do?
I have one question.
Go ahead, Shirley.
Is there a video for the faculty? Have they done that? Or are we still just meeting with them? Well, our institution individually, I just talk with them individually. Or you guys, did you prepare a video for that like you had mentioned last year?
That is on our to-do list. That is something we want to do a series of videos, but we really wanted to prioritize all of these facilitator tasks first and get all of them in. There are things in the handbook. If I could just one last time share the screen, handbook and policy manual, because I've bookmarked it here. We have statewide meetings. Also, if you have, you can just type in faculty here, but faculty member duties and responsibilities. This outlines before meetings, during meetings, after meetings, what they should be doing. You don't want to go over too much of the content in the statewide update about who AZTransfer is. We've tried to build a lot of that orientation into the Arizona transfer system, into the ATF meeting itself. But we will be doing that over time. That is on our to-do list, but we wanted to really prioritize all of the facilitator training tasks first. And Cian, I don't know if you want to add anything to that because.
No, that's good. I was going to recommend though that once the meeting ends, let's stop recording, and anyone who has time to sit on and look, share their words, we could do that as well for anyone who has time, or we can just send anything out in the email thread as you had recommended.
Either I cannot stay on, so I'm gonna have to go, but I think Cian, if I leave, because we're co-hosts, you still have the meeting. I just don't want to leave and have it disrupt it for everyone else. So I will stop the recording now, and you can stay on if you want, but it will end the formalized training period for today.